All right, everyone. Thank you all for joining me today. Okay, so I've got a very important video for you guys today, and I want to talk about this. It's regarding the current global situation that's going on right now in the world, and how Africa again is smack in the middle of all of this. And I want to talk to you guys about a recent testimony that was given by Dr. Celeste Wallander, who is the assistant. She is the Assistant Secretary of Defense for International Security Affairs for the United States. She sat right in front of the House Armed Service Committee to give her testimony regarding the U.S. defense around the world, U.S. partnership around the world, and who are the most significant and essential partners for the United States defense, as well as the United States as a country. I want you to take a look at what she says about Africa, and I'll be right back.
Significant U.S. assistance to Israel aims at ensuring that what happened on October 7th can never be repeated. The United States unequivocally stands for the protection of civilian lives during armed conflict, consistent with the law of war. We continue to underscore with Israel and regional counterparts, both publicly and privately, the importance of obligations related to civilian harm mitigation and risks of conflict to civilians during Israel's operations against Hamas. We closely monitor the situation in Lebanon to Israel's north. We continue working to contain the conflict while deterring state and non-state actors seeking to escalate tensions. DoD continues to hold Iran and its proxies accountable for their attacks on U.S. and coalition forces. We do not seek conflict in the Middle East, but attacks on American forces will not be tolerated, and we remain postured and prepared to use all means necessary to prevent a nuclear-armed Iran while working to counter Iran's destabilizing activities. On the AFRICOM AOR, Africa is not merely important, it is essential. African partnerships are critical for the Department of Defense to maintain its technological edge, accomplish its geopolitical and strategic objectives, and power our futures.
What was that? Did you just hear that? No. You got to hear that one again.
Africa is not merely important, it is essential. African partnerships are critical for the Department of Defense to maintain its technological edge, accomplish its geopolitical and strategic objectives, and power our futures.
Did you just hear that? Partnership with Africa is not just important, it is essential. It is essential for the Department of Defense to have a technological advantage and maintain an edge over everyone. It is also essential to power our future. Did you just hear that part? The person talking is not just a low-ranking person. This is the Assistant Secretary of Defense for International Security Affairs for the United States. She's a big whiz. She is telling, right, the Armed Service Committee the important role that Africa plays to the United States and why Africa is essential to the future of this country. Can you believe that? She can't be talking about the same Africa. No, she cannot be talking about the same Africa. You mean the same Africa that this country, England, Europe, have all sent out propaganda and talk about it is the poorest continent? You mean it's the same Africa that have all put out propaganda, information out there that all of Africans are leaving the continent because the continent is dying and they're coming to the West and Europe? You mean it's the same Africa that they said that it's all the diseases of the world, HIV came from, Black Plague, all the deadly diseases that the world has suffered came from this horrible continent? Is this the same Africa? This is the same Africa she's saying that is essential to the United States and to the survival and to help power this country? No. No. It can't be that same Africa. No. Yeah, it is. It's the same Africa. Right? As a matter of fact, she is not the only one that said it. You remember years ago, French President Jacques Chirac said also that Africa, without Africa, France would have slid into a third world country. You remember he said that? He also then said that we bled Africa for 4.5 centuries. We looted their raw materials. Then we told lies that Africans are good for nothing. In the name of religion, we destroyed their cultures. And then after being made rich at their expense, we now steal their brains through miseducation, misdirection, and misinformation, as well as propaganda to prevent them from enacting African rebellion against us. That was something that former French president said. See, it's an understanding in both Europe and the West. There has to be a coordinated attack against Africa, which is something that they've always done over the years. You heard the former French president say this, and now you're hearing a U.S. diplomat say the same thing. Yeah, it's the same Africa. You see, the propaganda against Africa started years ago. It started years ago because white people knew that once upon a time, Africa and that continent was the dynasty. See, long ago, during the Egyptian dynasty, and also during Kemet, and many other kingdoms in Africa, Africa was a source of life for everything. Africa was where everybody went to learn trade, to go study. Timbuktu University. Egypt was where the Greek philosophers, Aristotle, Socrates, and many of them went to learn. Back when Africa was a mighty dynasty, all the regions in Africa were thriving. People came to Africa. So this knowledge about Africa and Africa being a land endowed with resources has been something that Europeans have always known about, because once upon a time, they went to Africa for food. They went to Africa to learn. Africa and their countries had the strongest army. They ruled vast majority of the earth long time ago. But they stayed in their region. Africa was a dynasty, was a place that everybody wanted to go to. But when Africa fell, because again, with every time, there's a time and season for everything, right? What goes up must come down, right? Everyone is affected by the law of diminishing return. Everyone is affected by your time and season. Africa had its time, and its time has come and gone. And so when the Europeans sensed that it was a time now, because Africa has now fallen, right? They knew and they seized that opportunity to begin dismantling all that was great about Africa. The first thing they did was distort the image and the size of Africa. See, most times when we look at the map today of Africa, the map that we have today of Africa depicts Africa as almost equal size with all the other continents, when actually Africa is the largest continent of all the other continents. The map that most of us are known to was actually recreated back in 1500 by a gentleman known as Gerardus Mercator through the whole Mercator projection. He was a geographer. He was the one that redesigned the entire map that we have today. This was done in 1569. So he resized Africa, resized it so it looks like what you have today. So most people today believe that Africa isn't as large, is not one of the largest continents, when Africa is the largest continent. Africa, in terms of size, is 30.4 million square kilometers in terms of land mass. Africa is the largest continent. But they needed to distort that. They needed to begin the propaganda that this place that once ruled, that was once the giant on earth, that was once the center of education, once the center of civilization, once the center of economics, once the center of military might, once the center of rulership and lordship. This once a place cannot be remembered, and we need to change. And so you find the destruction of a lot of the libraries. See, when the Greeks, through Alexander, came and were conquering the whole place, they destroyed every Egyptian archive. They destroyed all the libraries in Egypt. They stole a lot of the scrolls and rewrote history to have their own imprint on it. That's usually what happens. So a lot of the stuff that most people believe about Africa today are distorted truth and version of Africa. But the propaganda doesn't stop there. It has continued in our modern times. Today, most people believe that Africa is a center of all the diseases. Most people believe that HIV came from Africa. If you ask an average person, they'll tell you this, that HIV came from Africa. HIV was a construct of the West. But they'll tell you that it came from Africa. It came from the monkeys in Africa. I can guarantee you that not long from now, you're going to hear that COVID-19 also came from Africa. I guarantee you. Wait just 5-10 years from now, when everybody knows that it came from Wuhan, China. I guarantee you, right? Just give it 5-10 years from now, you're going to hear propaganda that COVID-19 came from Africa. We certainly have heard over the years that the Black Plague, smallpox, chickenpox, all of this stuff came from Africa. We've heard this stuff. It's a well-designed propaganda to paint that continent less than. Because if they can kill the value of the continent, it makes it easy for the robbery. If they can kill the value of the continent and help and also kill the belief or deceive the citizens of Africa, Africa's sons and daughters, they're going to leave their countries. They're going to leave their continent because we told them that this place is not good. So that's another propaganda. The other propaganda also is that Africa is so malnourished and lacks food. It's a poorest continent. And so they need help. So once in a while, or occasionally, you'll find people donate to Africa. You'll find them donate to the sons, to the children, because all the image that is ever allowed to be shown about Africa are the images of children with flies all over their faces. You're not allowed to show image of Africa looking like Paris. You're not allowed to show image of Africa looking like New York, looking like Dubai. Because to the West and Europe, there's an acceptable image that they've all come to know. You see, when you've lived in the West long enough, you'll find that there's certain images that kind of circulate all over the place, right? Certain landmarks, certain structure, certain buildings are attached to every image. So it gives the appeal that every time when you see these type of landmarks or you see these types of structure, you just kind of know, okay, this is Paris, the Eiffel Tower. Yeah, sure. So every image about Paris got to have the Eiffel Tower in there. Because that way we need people to know that this is Paris. It's beautiful. When you see New York, it's got to be the United States. It's got to either be New York, the Statue of Liberty. It's got to be the tall buildings. It's got to be San Francisco, the Golden Gate Bridge. So there's certain landmarks that have to be in pictures, in images, because it reiterates what they want the public perception to be. When it comes to Africa, what do you think the image is? Yeah. It's the image of lions and tigers and bears. You find people today in the West that will ask me, I still get this ridiculous question. The safaris in Africa. I'm talking to somebody. I remember one time I went to my dentist, and the hygienist was working on my teeth. And I told her, I'm from Africa, and she's like, oh man, I love the safaris over there. And I had to tell her, like, I've never been to any safari in Africa, so I don't know what it looked like. She's like, no, oh man, you could tell how she looked so ridiculous after I said that. So she tried to backtrack. She's like, oh man, my husband and I, we've seen pictures, and yeah, that's the only thing you've seen of Africa is safaris. Because that's what's been imprinted in her mind. That when you think of Africa, you think of people running through the desert. White people with their white shirts and their hats in an excursion vehicle, and there's a tiger walking back and forth. That's all people see. See, when I always tell people, the first time I went to a zoo or saw a lion was when I came to this country. Of course, they don't believe it, because again, that image has been imprinted in their mind. So you're not allowed to show places like Abuja with beautiful buildings, beautiful roads, beautiful architectural structures, beautiful skyscraper. You're not allowed to show that because that will confuse white people. They might think that that is Paris, and you know that's uncomfortable. You're not allowed to show places in Lagos. Do you understand this? So every time CNN or MSNBC go and do a documentary in Nigeria, the place they go to the swampy area. They go to the mall because that's the part. And you know why they do that? They use that to scam money from their people so they can donate, and they're going to tell you that a portion of the proceeds is going to be sent to Africa. Yeah, a penny out of the dollar that you contributed goes to this place. But the bulk of it, we're just going to put in our pocket. That's how the nonprofit thing works in this country, if you don't already know. It's an emotional stealing. So they show the part because it's part of that whole keeping that narrative. Because again, the question now becomes this. If Africa is all of this, then why do you need Africa? If Africa truly is the poverty states of the entire globe, the poorest continent, then why is Dr. Celeste Wallander saying in her hearing, when she's talking to the Armed Service Committee, that Africa is essential to U.S. livelihood? Why these poor place in Africa? If it really is what they show you in the image, then what is the likes of the United States, England, and France? Why are they dealing with that place? What do they need from such an impoverished continent? What do you need with such a place? You certainly don't need such a place. You're doing fine. You're doing great. You don't need Africa, right? No. Because on the contrary, Africa truly is the only rich continent in the world. Africa is the richest continent, while this part of the world is a poor continent. You see, it's the reverse. See, Africa built the United States. Africa built the communities in the United States. Africa gave them the livelihood that they have today, which is why she can tell you that. The same thing with France. Same thing with England. Africa built their country, so they need Africa to stay poor. They need Africa to stay impoverished. They need the people to buy into the propaganda, because that's the only way this whole thing works. They need to demonize Africans and Africa, right? They need to magnify every time one Africa does something wrong. Magnify it. Every time you see a few Africans crossing the border, they need to magnify it as though all Africans want to come up here. They need to send that message, because that kind of message is what helps the capitalism structure in this country. Because if all Africans believe that, right? If every African believes that Africa is crap, every African leader believes that they've lost the hope, they can't help their country anymore, and everyone in the West believes that Africans just need help, guess what happens? It makes the resources in Africa easily attainable for exploit. It makes it easy. It's the most strategic misdirection game out there. That's exactly how this works. So you find people in the West who will tell people in Africa, we can't allow Africans to come to this country. You find this type of talk when their country cannot even have a tenth of what they have if it weren't for Africa. Africa powers this country. Africa gives this country life. Africa is the one that built the roads, the structures. Africa's wealth is what they've lived on since this country started. There was certainly African labor that built this country. It's certainly Africa's resources during colonialization that has powered this country and many countries. It's certainly a lot of the policies today that the U.S. uses to rob Africa and keeps Africa down, because, Africa is not allowed to build. So let me help you understand this. For those people who keep saying that Africa needs to build, Africa is not allowed to build. See, Africa for years has been kept, right? There's a stronghold in Africa. Africa is not allowed to build. The moment Africa and African leaders decided they want to build, guess what happened? There's sanctions. There's assassinations. We know the stories. There's a threat of sanctions. As a matter of fact, let me give you couple of headlines real quickly to help you understand what I just talked about in terms of Africa isn't allowed to build. So here is a New York Times article. It says right here, and this is in regards to the recent, Russia-Ukraine war and the current tension between West Europe against Russia, right, for invading Ukraine. Now, U.S. diplomat warns African countries against buying anything from Russia except grains and fertilizer. Can you imagine that? This New York Times article. So the U.S., right, can tell 54 countries on a continent, hey, guess what? We have not approved you to do business with Russia. The only thing you can get from Russia are grains and fertilizer. That's the only approved product that that's the only product we've approved you could go get. Anything outside of that, you're going to get sanctioned. Okay. Here is one. It's a black person. Yeah? It's a U.S. diplomat, a black American that works that's part of the thievery, all right, with this country to rob Africa. And this is an ambassador for the United States, Linda Thomas. She says, right, that Africa can only buy Russian grains but risk action on oil. Right? Yeah, sure. Africa should go and build their country. Yeah. They're able to do that how are they able to do that with these types of bullying and sanctions from your country? Here's another one. U.S. lawmakers, now these are lawmakers now, right? Ask the Biden administration to punish South Africa for alleged support for Russia. So South Africa, which is a country in Africa, is not allowed to do business with Russia because the United States said so. So the United States is the only country, as well as England, France, who's the other one? There are many other ones, all the NATO alliance, right? They're the only ones that can rob Africa. They're the only ones that can go and exploit Africa to build their country and their territories and become enriched at the expense of Africa. So the moment Africans, sovereign countries in Africa, decide that, no, we want to do business with Russia, China, oh, no. If you do that, come on. Russia is our enemy. So because Russia is our enemy, Russia got to be your enemy. These are our enemies right here. They got to be your enemies. You're not allowed to think, Africa. You're not allowed to make decisions for yourself. You're not allowed to build. You're not allowed to sell these products to us at fair market value. Because we're going to sanction you. So you see what the states that Africa is in. And so that's why Africa cannot build. And that's why Africa remains in perpetual poverty. Because it's to the advantage and benefit of these other countries. Because they need Africa. So they need to keep selling the same propaganda to the entire world of Africa. Because it helps to build their roads. It helps to build their communities. It helps to give livelihood to them. It helps to power their countries. It helps to enrich their countries. It helps to put money into their system. It helps to fuel their system economically. And then they look down on you and say, hey, why are you coming to our country? And so here's what I would say to, and I'm going to close. Here's what I would say to everyone in the West who's worried about Africa and Africans coming to your country. Here's a solution for you. Are you ready? Here's a solution. To everyone who goes around saying that Africa and Africans need to go back to their country, they need to go ahead and build their country. Here's a solution for you. You ready? I need you to get off, okay, to get off your butt. And I need you to begin petitioning your Congress, right? Go to your Congress, your congressman and your congresswoman, and tell them to leave Africa alone. Tell them that immigration is such a problem for you that you don't want to see Africans in your country. Because I guarantee all Africans are going to applaud you for this. I guarantee you this. Tell them, right, that they need to leave Africa alone. They need to get out of Africa. Take the military out of Africa. take your resources, leave the continent, leave the countries in Africa, leave them alone to do their business, leave them alone to build, leave them alone to explore their land, to use their resources they build, leave Africa alone. I need you to get off your butt and go to your Congress and tell your Congress that immigration is such a problem for you, especially from these Africans, and that they need to get out of Africa. Because I guarantee you, you're going to have a debt of gratitude from every African. We're going to thank you for it. We're going to thank you for it. I need you to do that and see how far you get. I need you to do that and see what your congressman and your congresswoman tells you. I need you to hear it from them firsthand, because you seem to buy into the propaganda. Because I guarantee you, I and millions of Africans in this country and in Europe will thank you for it and will leave this country. And see how long your country stands. See how long your country stands. See how long you and your comfort are able to sustain. See how long it takes. See if they even keep you or kick you out of the office. That is the only thing I'm asking. Because a simple solution is very, very simple. Right? Trust me, you ain't going to hurt my feelings. I need you to mobilize the same way we saw all the protests on the streets. Right? And we know that black people love to protest. We know you can gather up on the streets. I need you to begin gathering together. Right? And walk up to Washington, D.C. or anywhere. Go to your House of Congress. Mobilize and say, hey, right? We need you to get out of Africa. We are tired of seeing these Africans in our country. We need you to leave Africa. I need that to be something from black Americans. Trust me, you're going to get a public gratitude from every African. And let's see how far your lifestyle and your country maintains its dominance in the world. Let's see how far your country goes to become the economic powerhouse. Let's see how far you last on the economic stage. I guarantee you this. It don't take long. In a year, your economy will crash. I guarantee you, your economy will crash. But you ain't going to do it. You ain't going to do it. See, that's why the propaganda works. Because they rely on peasants and on uneducated people to keep the propaganda alive. So that's how propaganda works. See, when you communicate falsehood in the world, uneducated people take it as gospel, right? And they run with it. And so when we have enough uneducated people in the world who can run with propaganda, that's how you keep propaganda alive. But because I have an edutainment platform, I'm telling you, and I'm telling black Americans, because you often hear this from these so-called ignorant black Americans, right? I need black Americans to get up and do something about this, because it's a problem, right? You can get the Africans out today. As a matter of fact, within a year, right? I guarantee you, I will gladly, right? With my American passport, I will gladly leave the country. The moment there is a public announcement that Africa, United States is going to leave Africa, right? And move its military out of Africa, move its resources out of Africa, and leave the country built. I guarantee you, I will leave the country and I will go back to Africa. And leave you in this country with your white folks. But you ain't going to do it. Because you're a coward and you benefit from the exploit of Africa. And your congressman and congresswoman knows this. They'll kick you out of the office. They'll walk you out of the office. Because Africa is essential, right? Africa is essential to the livelihood, to the growth, to the sustainability of this country. Not just this country, all Western countries, all European countries. Africa is. So that is my challenge for you, and I hope you will do it. But for the rest of us Africans, here's what I implore you. You were a king and queen on the planet. You were the first creation on this entire planet. Everyone came out of you. Everyone originated from you. Everyone learned from you. Understand the power that you've been endowed with. Understand the might that you have inside of you. Understand who you are on this earth. Understand that the only reason why you're being defeated is because you allowed yourself to be defeated. Understand that if you got yourself together today and you change your mind, understand if you begin to re-educate yourself on who you are on this earth, no man, no woman, no entity, no country can ever destroy you. They need you to believe the lie to keep you down. They need you to believe the identity they've given you rather than what you really are. I need you to get up off that. And I need you to begin walking as a king and queens that you are. Because the moment you do that, the world will stand with you. Thank you all for watching. Please leave me a comment, like this video, subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you all next time.
My side, oh why? Sätter du rör på det får mig att dö för dig baby. För de här yardis, de vill ju bara dra ner oss. Men du är fett och vanlig. Och det jag lägger av min tid och jag vill ha dig. Du får mig känna safety. Det kan nog leda baby. Och jag kommer aldrig ändra.